Hey everybody, it's Jimmy and Bill. So today, Bill, what we're going to talk about is an article that came out from Yahoo. Finance returns to the 70s. Today's housing market has echoes of the dark era. You remember the 70s?
That's your era, buddy. Yes, I remember the 70s, but I was very young in the 70s.
Yeah, but I remember, like gas shortages, high inflation, taxes. People were paying 18% for mortgages. Like it was ridiculous.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah.
It wasn't a good time.
Yeah.
So the late 70s, even like the 1980s, stuff like that, wasn't a good time. So I guess that's what this article is about from Yahoo Finance. So let's read it. As always, we didn't pre-read this. Let's see if we agree with it or we disagree with it. And then we'll go from there. In the meantime, if you guys could do me a favor, if you like this kind of content, consider subscribing. It's greatly appreciated.
Absolutely.
So here we go.
All right. High inflation and high interest rates were hallmarks of the stagflation cycle that dragged down the economy a half a century ago. High inflation and disappointing report on economic growth, followed by a sudden drop in stocks late last month, made for a familiar economic combination.
That's true. So basically, stagflation,
Yep.
Things are still getting more expensive, but the economy is not doing that great. Unemployment numbers be going up. And I think a lot of people are getting laid off. We don't hear about it in the news that much, but I know a few people personally that got laid off.
Yeah, right, yeah.
And lost their jobs. And, people aren't feeling comfortable. Consumer confidence is way down on the economy. It's way down.
Yeah, I agree with that 110%.
So, tell us what you guys think. Go for it.
So these conditions were hallmarks of the 1970s when inflation ran high, leading the Federal Reserve to hike interest rates. The central bank's measures to tame inflation drove up borrowing costs for real estate developers and ultimately shrunk home buyers' purchasing power, which happening today 100%. That's...
Yeah, if say interest rates, okay, they keep saying, now they're saying there's going to be 2 price cuts in the rates. I don't think it's going to happen. Yeah. But anyways, because if that happens, if they cut interest rates, they're admitting there's a problem.
Right.
But if rates go up, say rates hit 9% or 10%, if God forbid they hit double digits, game over.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't think anybody's going to be buying a house, right now. And don't forget, 4 out of 5 people are still saying, according to the surveys, it's not the right time to buy a house.
Right. And you got to remember with inflation too, so everybody kind of understands the difference between raising and lowering. We're talking the federal rate.
Right, the federal rate.
The federal base rate, raising and lowering. That's where they're staying stagnant. Your interest rates will go up and come down based off the market and conditions on a day-to-day basis. Because we've seen some down slides a little bit, slowly, just a little bit, but that's not because the Fed cut the rates, just so people understand that. That's just because there's a natural ebb and flow to interest rates. Yeah,
but a lot of people, that know the 70s pretty well, grew up in the 70s and everything, they're like, this feels like the 70s all over again. And so far, I'm agreeing with this article, but you do such a great job reading. Continue.
As a result, the housing market stagnated and the decade itself became synonymous with stagflation, an economic cycle characterized by high inflation, tepid growth, and weak employment, leading to a stagnant economy. While those trends, may sound familiar, the current housing market is resilient. Not to mention, job growth is solid. The major problem today, a dearth of inventory.
Okay, I disagree with a couple things on that. The 70s, from what I understand, it was, we had an oil embargo against us, We didn't have the reserves, not that we're not using all the reserves just to keep rates down, prices down now, but, so there was an oil embargo which triggered the high inflation and a few other things too. But a fluffer of inventory, okay? I don't agree with that either. Yes, there's more inventory on the market. They're talking about housing?
Yeah, the problem today is a dearth of inventory, a lack of inventory.
Okay, I think there's more and more inventory coming on the market.
Absolutely.
But I think people are coming in a little too high on the prices.
Yeah, so what we're seeing is a combination of a couple things when it comes to inventory. Days on market now is, if you remember back during the pandemic, days on market was like a half a day. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. If it was 3 or 4 days, there was a problem. So then we kind of started getting back to a more normal market, 30-ish days, and we've been creeping up over the last couple of years, slowly but surely.
Yeah.
Now we're starting to see, it's not uncommon in certain markets, 30 and 60 days on market. Our average here just in the Tampa Bay area is about 34 days, give or take. But what we're seeing is houses sitting 120 days, to your point, because people are listing their properties too high. They still find that one site or one home or one property that's sold.
Or they're looking at Zillow and those estimates are off too.
Right, so everybody compares the Zestimate, which I completely understand. So that's give or take some numbers. But what's not happening is when you're getting ready to list your house, you have to compare apples to apples, and comparing your property to maybe a fully renovated property that's sold for more money it's not an apple, that's an apple and a grape. It's such a far stretch. So that's where you have to compare apples to apples, and you can't go back 6 months and say, hey, I saw this house sold for this amount, or even a year. It just doesn't work like
so,
that.
I mean, that's one of the reasons why you see a lot of price cuts, because people are like, you just got a phone call before, and you're like, well, it's worth 189 or whatever you were saying.
Yep.
But they want to list it at 210 to see what happens, but everybody else in the place is 189.
Right, yeah, everybody else is backing the prices down, and they're down into where they should be and where they should have started.
So, I mean, you just don't want to waste time as a realtor, and say, hey, this is the realistic price. But because deep down, a lot of realtors will list it at 210 just to get the listing.
Right.
But then 2-3 weeks later, they're going to do a price cut, and it's going to be with everybody else. Price cut, price cut, price cut.
Right.
In some areas in Florida, like Hudson, you see a lot of price cuts, not because they're not priced correctly, it's because of so much inventory because of insurance. People can't afford the insurance.
Right. And the insurance there is super, super high. And it's not just, it's kind of everywhere in just our region. It's everywhere, I think. There's a couple markets, from what I've heard from different associates of mine, that the market there is really, really hot. So it's kind of more back to that like pandemic, everything's on fire. But again, I don't know because I don't track those numbers, but here we do see a lot of people still listing their homes too high. At the end of the day, we have to do what we're told. As a realtor, it's, I present the facts, the numbers, and issues that we're going to have if we do this. I give you options. And at the end of the day, it's your decision of whether or not you want to list it high and take the chance.
Yeah.
And some properties
but that's why there's so much you could do.
Yeah.
You could argue that the weakness in the housing market at the moment caused by supply side shock. Mark Fleming, chief economist for First American, told Yahoo Finance. In other words, restrictions in the supply of good, which is causing inflation. But I wouldn't say we're in a stagflation, noted Fleming. The problem isn't weak demand, it's weak supply.
Again, I do agree with the supply.
Yes, you agree with the supply, but right now, too, I just think with that statement is people are watching their money, too.
Oh, absolutely.
So, yeah, they might have the demand. People might want a house, or they might want that car, they might want everything, but they don't want to pay that price. And everybody's waiting for prices to crash.
I do not see a giant crash, like a crash. Will prices maybe come down a little? Yes. But that can also be done through negotiations, and there's so many other pieces to that. That's not just that's a whole video in and of itself, maybe 3.
All right, Claudia, I won't butcher your last name. Former Fed economist of chief economist of the New Century Advisors, LLC, agreed with this statement. This is not stagflation, said Saham. Did I say that right?
Sure.
The GDP numbers.
Good, how you doing?
Soft.
All right, we're back. So I think we left off with, this is not stagflation. You want me to pick it up?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. This is not stagflation, the person said, because I'm going to butcher that name. GDP numbers look soft, but consumer spending is just trickling along. But we are in this ongoing struggle with inflation, and people call inflation all sorts of things.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Mortgage rates top 7%. Is this a good time to buy? That's one of the other topics of this article.
Like I said, 4 out of 5 people say it's not a good time to buy, but if you need a house, you need a house.
That was kind of where I was heading. I'm like, well, if you don't have a place to live, might be a good time to buy.
Yeah.
If you're getting relocated or you have to downsize or upsize because you need some more space, it's going to be a good time to buy. And at the end of the day, we're still selling a lot of houses nationally.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
We're still selling a ton of houses nationally, and we're still way too early in the year to even make speculations, but we're on track to kind of do what we did last year in volume.
Yeah.
Which is not a bad thing. That's, it actually, I kind of feel like it's a breath of fresh air because we're starting to get normal. The more normal we get, the better things will be.
Oh, I agree. I agree 100% because according to this, the next sentence says a housing supply gap of 6.5 million homes.
Yeah. Well, and that's now, let's talk about that for a second because I think that's important. Like, this didn't just happen in the past 4 years.
Okay.
This has been going on since the financial crisis back in 06, 7, and 8. Like, the builders got stuck holding the bag so bad and they lost their shirts.
Yeah, during the last crash. Yeah,
during the actual financial crash, that building fell so far behind, it's going to take us years and years to get caught back up again. We're not going to do this in 1 or 2 years.
Yeah, we're not going to build ourselves out of this and everything now.
And we've talked about that in the past videos as well.
Okay, at its roots, inflation is the result of imbalance of supply and demand. It's true. Or cheap money. People just, if it's cheap money, if rates were down to practically nothing, it was cheap money. So, that causes too, because there's more demand. If something's more affordable, like cars are, the car market's crashing now because rates are really high. But when rates were 1%, 3% for a car, obviously everybody wants a new car because it's pretty much free money. Okay, in the housing market, weak inventory was a problem that existed prior to the pandemic due to over a decade of underbuilding. We just talked about that. When interest rates fell to a record low, buyers swarmed the market and were met with scarce inventory. The builders had their field. They were like, okay, there's not enough houses for everybody. We'll just build. Well, they had auctions for the land.
Yeah, during the pandemic, you were getting on a list and you had to put a deposit. It was wild.
And if you tried negotiating with them,
well, there was no negotiating.
No.
It was you're doing this or you're doing that, and that's the end of it. And that's the way it was. Now we're getting back into more normal times. Even the builders, I've noticed, because I just went with some customers today to some new builds, and I've started noticing that those fantastic interest rates are not there anymore. They're better, but they're not those great.
The construction people aren't doing.
Yeah, they're not doing those.
They're starting to hurt too. You're noticing, at least over here.
Yep.
The 3,000 square foot houses.
Yep.
They're going down to 2,200 now.
Yeah. Well, they flipped. They're not doing that big stuff. So it makes perfect sense. This resulted in bidding wars, which we talked about. Frenzied buyers foregoing inspections to close deals faster and home prices climbing to record levels in some hot markets. We had a weakness before the pandemic, and the pandemic just blew it up. This is what I just said earlier. This is exactly what I said earlier, that we were already low, now we're even more low because when you drop the interest rates to it's almost free money per se.
Yeah.
You open the door to so many buyers that were not qualified before.
And then when you told everybody, hey, you have to work from home, and they're like, or hey, be a remote worker. You can live anywhere in the country. A lot of people are like, hey, I'm going to get out of this cold weather and I'm going to go down to Florida or I'm going to go to Texas.
Right.
I'm going to go tax because I'm still getting the salary of say a New Yorker.
Right.
But I'll go live in Florida. I mean, right now we're kind of with the prices of Florida the way it's going, and it's but. Well, you know what I mean? It was too easy, the pandemic, and I don't see that happening again. I think we learned a lot of lessons saying, hey, Florida didn't close down during the pandemic.
Right.
You know?
Not compared to what other places shut down in the United States or even across the globe. How things were shut down in different areas.
I mean, we had some restrictions at the beginning, but that didn't last long.
It didn't last long. It wasn't like, it wasn't like other places that I was in.
Yeah, as homeowners hunkered down and focused on refinancing at a lower rate during the pandemic, home builders saw the opportunity to boost nation's supply of homes. As of March, there was 477,000 new single-family homes available for purchase in various stages of development versus 970,000 existing single-family homes.
Wow.
Yeah. That says a lot. Overall, the construction accounted for 1/3 of inventory on the market that month, well above the 12% average according to data provided by the National Association of Home Builders. 1/3 of all new homes and sales were new construction. And now people are still flocking to new construction because when rates jumped up, the builders said, hey, we'll do a buy down rate. You know, they do everything in-house.
Right, that's how they get you. You got to use their lender, et cetera, because that's how they make the deals.
Yeah, but they say, hey, well, you know, everybody else is paying 7%, buy this house, we'll get it for you for 5 3/4.
Yeah. Yep, they had a lot of incentives to buy, and they ran specials, and it drove sales. That's for sure, just like any sale would.
You know, while builders are responsible for much of the inventory currently available, the undersupply is caused by homeowners who locked in, sitting on ultra low rates that don't want to give them up. How many times have we said this? The golden handcuffs.
Yep. Yeah, the lock-in rate.
They're like, hey, you know, I have a 3% rate, I don't want to give it up. Look at this, I have golden handcuffs, not because of mortgages, I have handcuffs because of taxes.
Right.
So like if I sold my house, say I'm paying really low, but if I sold my house and bought an equal house or a little better house, I'll be paying easily $12,000 a year. And then, you know, then it's basically $1,000 a month for taxes plus insurance. I won't feel like I own the home because I think if anybody that's paying as much as rent for taxes and insurance doesn't really feel to me like they own the home. It feels like they're renting it from the state.
Yeah, and we've debated that several times. I mean, it's still your house, but you're never going to get away from taxes.
Yeah, but the whole thing is it's the golden handcuffs because if I'm paying low taxes, just because I'm going to be punished for selling my house and buying another house.
I don't know if it would be punished necessarily, but I mean...
punishment, I'm going from...
Yeah, but that's not a punish. That's just the way it works. That's how the system is set up. We could go to converse and do the other system where everybody across the board, no matter when you bought your house, the government comes in and says, okay, it's a tax reassessment, or you know your mortgage is getting reassessed now because it's been 5 years.
No, I'm not saying it's a perfect situation, but like I could be paying, you know, say a couple thousand, my neighbor could be paying 10,000 for the same exact house. I just don't find it like a fair system.
But I mean, realistically, think about it.
That's in Florida, yeah.
Right, but you purchased I was talking about other parts of not parts of the country necessarily, I was talking other parts of the world. And there are parts of the country that do reassess loans, from what I've been told. But, you know, to your point, you've been in your house for a long time. So instead of looking at it from a punishment if you're going to sell, traditionally, like, you're not going anywhere no matter what, right? Like,
no, I got the golden handcuffs.
Regardless of the golden handcuffs, outside of there, what would you say? It's like you saying you're going to sell your boat to do what? Buy the same boat, just a different color? Yeah, but we took care of that.
We already discussed all that.
It's not, think of it as more of a, you know, when you purchase your home, it's not meant to just be this cyclical thing that you turn over like your car every 5 years. You're getting into the ages of where you're going to retire. So look at it more of as a benefit and a reward for staying in your house. You get a benefit of it versus, okay, well, I'm 65, 70 years old and I don't want to work anymore and I'm not working, but now you got to pay higher taxes versus the people who are just coming into the market. When you purchase the house, right, it goes with your salary. This is kind of my point. Like when I bought my first house, it was equivalent with my salary.
Right. I just think that, you know, maybe we're getting off subject a little bit, but I just think that if you're paying $12,000 or $15,000 for tax and insurance, you really, to me, it doesn't feel like you own the house, because if you don't pay that taxes, at least you're going to lose the house.
But when I bought my house 32 years ago, like my $3,000 tax bill, I thought was the end of the world. You know what I mean? Because it was cyclical. It was in sync with my salary. Now I would be like, oh my God, I have a $3,000 tax bill. I'm not going anywhere.
Right,
but
that's what I mean.
I look at that as a reward because I don't really want to go anywhere.
And you know, and the HOAs too. You know, like
don't get me started on that today.
No, but we're going to do a video. Hey, you know what, Bill? We don't want this video to go on too long. This is a really important subject about, are we going back to the 70s styles?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's do a twofer.
Let's do a twofer. So this will be part one. In a couple of days, we will upload part 2. So in the meantime, and make sure you watch both of them. Watch this one and hit the bell notification and subscribe so you're notified when part 2 gets up. Because this stuff gets really, really interesting, and we're going to talk about it. So we will talk to you on the part 2. Thank you and have a great day.
Appreciate it. See you on part 2.
Bye.